Denmark and Netherlands have been leading international efforts to train pilots for the F-16 jets, as well as support staff, maintain aircraft, and ultimately enable Ukraine to obtain F-16 aircraft for use in its war with Russia. Something that Zelensky has really been requesting for the F-16 fighter jets. Now, the clamor to provide Ukraine with United States-built F-16 jets is growing. And here's a look at all the recent developments and how it's going to impact the ongoing conflict. Now, Ukraine is jubilant as the United States has officially approved the F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine. And till now, they had only approved the training of the pilots for F-16 jets, but now it is finally official. Washington gave Denmark and the Netherlands official assurances that US will expedite approval of transfer requests for F-16s when the pilots are finally trained. Now, the Denmark and the Netherlands had recently asked for those assurances. US Secretary of State sent letters to his Danish and Dutch counterparts. Blinken said, and I'm quoting here, that it remains critical that Ukraine is able to defend itself against ongoing Russian aggression and violation of its sovereignty. Remember, Washington must legally approve. It must legally approve the re-export of US equipment purchased by allies. Now, earlier on Wednesday, Ukrainian Air Force spokesperson stated that Kiev will not be able to operate F-16 fighter jets this coming autumn or in the winter. So we are going to see it happen finally in 2024 if the war continues till then. Now, let's take a look at the key details about the F-16 fighter jets. Why can and how can they possibly change the way for Ukraine in the ongoing conflict? The Fighting Falcon has a maximum takeoff weight of over 16,000 kilograms. The speed that it can achieve is 2,414 kilometers per hour. It can hit over Mach 2 and this is at altitude. Mach 2 is, of course, twice the speed of sound. It has a ceiling of above 50,000 feet or 15 kilometers. In terms of armament, and of course that is what matters as much in a war situation, the F-16 has a multi-barrel cannon with 500 rounds. External stations can carry up to 6 air-to-air missiles. The F-16 boasts of conventional air-to-air and air-to-surface munitions and electronic countermeasure pods as well. F-16 is one jet which has been used by several nations across the world and has been proven to be one of the most useful in war situations. Now, Ukraine is struggling to counter Russian air and artillery superiority. With depleted strength and dated aircraft, the Ukrainian Air Force is suffering, to say the least. And the counter-offensive has, of course, not gone as per plan and nowhere hit the target as what they had essentially imagined it would and would have evaluated to be. The Ukrainians fly Soviet-era jets even now, like the Sukhois and MiGs, the earlier versions. The country's current fleet of warplanes is older than modern Ukraine itself. And that's saying so much about what they're dealing with and what they're using. The big question is, will fighter jets be a magic wand for Ukraine? Let's talk about this further. Western fighters with standoff weapons would offer an improved capability to destroy fixed Russian targets near the front lines. However, the F-16s would be at high risk from Russian air defenses, and Russia has a lot of good air defenses. They have the S-300, the S-400, the S-500, and the S-550 is also in development, which can pretty much take out anything that flies. Now, pilots would thus have to fly very low near the front line, something that would essentially reduce missile range and limit strike options. So then how do they make the most of the ability that is being provided to them and the technology and, of course, the armor and the jets that are being given? Despite the US and allies' continued ambitious efforts to bolster
the US-Iran relationship is characterized by ongoing tensions, complex diplomacy, and intermittent negotiations on nuclear disarmament and regional stability. Join us in this video as we explore and compare the military capabilities of the United States and Iran. Defense budget. The United States defense budget is approximately $816 billion, while Iran's defense budget is approximately $25 billion. Nuclear warheads. The United States is estimated to have around 6,500 nuclear warheads, while Iran does not have any nuclear warheads. Active military personnel. The United States has around 1.4 million active military personnel, while Iran has around 610,000 active military personnel. Reserve military personnel. The United States has around 800,000 reserve military personnel, while Iran has around 350,000 reserve military personnel. Main battle tanks. The United States has approximately 6,612 main battle tanks, while Iran has approximately 2,842 main battle tanks. Total artillery. The number of total artillery units in the U.S. Army is approximately 4,243, while the number of total artillery units in the Iran Army is 4,873. Rocket artillery. The United States has 1,366 units of rocket artillery, while Iran has 1,755 such units. Self-propelled artillery. The United States has 1,498 self-propelled artillery units, while Iran possesses 1,030 such units. Armored fighting vehicles. The United States has around 41,237 armored fighting vehicles, while Iran has around 3,555 armored fighting vehicles, approximately 12,930 fighter aircraft, while Iran has approximately 973 fighter aircraft. Aircraft carriers. The United States has 20 aircraft carriers, while Iran has no such aircraft carriers. Helicopters. The United States has approximately 4,711 helicopters, while Iran has approximately 519 helicopters. Multi-role aircraft. The United States operates 2,417 multi-role aircraft, whereas Iran's fleet comprises 75 such aircraft. UCAV, combat drone. The United States currently possesses 334 UCAVs, combat drones, whereas Iran does not have any such drones. Navy ships. The United States has approximately 460 Navy ships, while Iran has approximately 272 Navy ships. Submarines. The United States has 69 submarines, while Iran has 19 submarines. Frigates. The United States does not have any frigates in its naval fleet, while Iran operates 6 frigates. Destroyers. The United States possesses 94 destroyers, while Iran currently has no such destroyers. The military power of the United States far exceeds that of Iran, with significant disparities in terms of technology, equipment, and overall capabilities. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Goodbye.
That have been there for the last month or so, and those are not the troops that have been prepared for the counterattack. And you're right, there has been pushback around Bakhmut. The troops have actually pushed around the sides of Bakhmut, Ukrainians, up to a depth of 2 kilometers. But Russia is not stopping its attack on Bakhmut, and I've just heard that they're bringing some parachute forces to reinforce the attack there. So I think that the front line is more opportunistic attacks where Russia seems to be weak, and that the local forces are trying to move forward, and are doing so in all sorts of areas, including towards Donetsk airport.
Right, Colonel. Also, while Zelensky is garnering military support, he visited 4 major European countries. The ongoing situation is something else. In the latest, the Russians have attacked. They've sent out air raid attacks throughout Ukraine. So, what is actually happening on ground? And do you think Bakhmut has become an area of claims and counterclaims?
No, I think Bakhmut is as it says, because you can actually see quite clearly the battlefield from air surveillance, from satellite surveillance, where the heat is of the battle. So Prigozhin in Bakhmut has actually said that his troops are withdrawing in places. So I think that that's pretty much clear. What's happening in the big picture is that Russia is still, where it's struggling on the front line in places, it's still throwing as many missiles and drones as it can into Ukraine with the aim of creating damage. Last night was very heavy attack on Kiev, and there were 3 or 4 injured, and some destruction, not from the drones themselves, missiles themselves, but actually from the debris after the missiles were hit. So the debris fell on several of the major residential areas in Kiev. But I think that the Russian aim at the moment is still to try and bring Kiev to the table so that they can hold the gains that they've got, because it's well known now from people talking on the other side that the Russians are extremely scared and are taking a lot of defense precautions, even senior officials moving out of places like Luhansk, Melitopol, and heading towards safety.
Right, Colonel. Thank you so much for joining us, Nubion, and sharing your insights with us. We'll, of course, have to wait and see when and how Ukraine's counteroffensive starts.
We will. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Colonel. Well, Rohit, it looks like the Ukrainian president had a huge shopping list during his Europe tour.
Yes, it was a Europe blitz by Vladimir Zelensky.
Absolutely. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has wrapped up his Europe tour. Now, he visited 4 countries: Britain, Germany, France and Italy. Zelensky's diplomatic tour comes ahead of Kiev's expected counteroffensive. The latest stop in his Europe tour was the United Kingdom, where he met with the UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. During the meet, the Ukrainian president said that he was hopeful of securing a quick deal to get fighter jets from the Western partners.
London has confirmed that it will send hundreds of air defense missiles and armed drones to Ukraine after it provided Kyiv with Storm Shadow cruise missiles last week. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak reaffirmed this while speaking at the Chequers Garden.
But I think it's important for the Kremlin to also know that we're not going away. Right, we are here for the long term. We remain steadfast in wanting to defend Ukraine, not just now to reclaim its rightful territory, but also to ensure that Ukraine has the means to defend itself into the future as well. And that's another topic of conversation that we've had today, is about the security arrangements that we should put in place amongst allied countries for Ukraine for the long term to ensure that it can defend itself and provide effective deterrence against future Russian aggression.
In response, the Kremlin has said that the new British weapons due to be supplied to Kyiv will only cause further destruction. Before meeting Sunak, Zelensky had stopped in France, where he held a working dinner with the French President Emmanuel Macron. Speaking during a televised interview with a French broadcaster, Macron said that he had opened the door to train Ukrainian pilots, adding that training on French planes such as the Mirage 2000 could start soon now. France has agreed to provide dozens more light tanks and armored vehicles for Ukraine's army as well. Macron has clearly emphasized on how Paris would focus its efforts in supporting Ukraine's air defense capacities in order to defend its population against the Russian strikes.
La deuxième chose, c'est donc qu'on livre tout, mais qu'on ne fasse pas la guerre à la Russie. On ne fait pas la guerre à la Russie. On aide l'Ukraine à résister face à l'assaillant russe. Ce qui veut dire qu'on ne livre pas d'armes qui permettraient d'atteindre le sol russe ou d'attaquer la Russie.
A day before landing in Paris, Zelensky also held a meeting with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, who has offered Zelensky $3 billion in new military package. It includes advanced German Leopard tanks and anti-aircraft systems to defend Ukraine. He also stopped over in Italy, where he held talks with Italian officials as well as Pope Francis. While he thanked Italy for all its support during the war, he urged the Pope to back Kyiv's 10-point peace plan. So what's the significance of Zelensky's Europe blitz? Rehisha is here to explain.
Absolutely, Rohit, like we just spoke about, that it looks like Zelensky had a huge shopping list when he visited Europe. Let's tell you more about this. Now, he visited 4 countries, Zelensky, during his Europe tour. First, he stopped over in Italy, where he met with the Italian officials and Pope Francis. He further urged the Pope to back Kiev's 10-point peace plan. After Italy, he visited Germany, where he met with the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz. Meanwhile, his second last visit was France, where he held a working dinner with Macron. Like you can see on the wall right now, he visited Italy, then he visited Berlin, he met with the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz there, and then he visited Paris. Lastly, his last stopover was London, where he met with UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. Let's also tell you more about Zelensky's diplomatic European tour. Like we mentioned, he first visited Italy, where he met Pope Francis. He urged Pope to back Kiev's 10-point peace plan. So far, Italy has backed Kiev's military aid. I mean, it's supporting Ukraine in the ongoing war. After Italy, Zelensky visited Germany, where he met with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz. During the meet, Berlin has clearly offered Kiev $3 billion in new military aid, like how you can see on the wall right now. Now, the package includes tanks, anti-aircraft systems, ammunition, and also German Leopard tanks. Now, Zelensky's second last stopover was in France. France has agreed to train Ukrainian fighter pilots. Macron has also agreed to send Kiev more tanks. However, during the visit, Macron has clearly said that France will not deliver fighter jets to Ukraine. Meanwhile, Macron has further supported Ukraine's air defense capabilities. And his last visit, Zelensky's last stopover, was the United Kingdom, where he met with UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. Now, UK has agreed to supply air defense missiles to Ukraine and also armed drones. UK has also pledged to train Ukrainian fighter pilots, just like France. And last week itself, UK was the first country to supply Kiev with Storm Shadow missiles. On to you for other global news I'm tracking on DNA, Rohit.
Thanks, Rehisha, for that explainer.
Russia's defense ministry reported that it had sent an Su-27 fighter jet over the Baltic Sea on Monday. The ministry said the jet was sent to intercept 2 aircrafts that Russia detected in its airspace. The Russian Defense Ministry identified the 2 aircrafts, one from Germany and another from France, in its airspace. In response, France and Germany say the planes were conducting regular flights as part of a NATO exercise. The planes were reported to be a French Atlantic II maritime patrol aircraft and a German P-3C Orion. The 2 countries reported there was no malicious reason behind the exercise. It was well in accordance with the international laws. France's Armed Forces Ministry confirmed that it had no intention to enter Russian airspace. The flights were just a routine. In its defense, Russia said it had sent the jets to prevent the Russian state border from being trespassed. Russia's Su-27 fighter jet returned to base after the French and German ones turned away from Russia. This is not the first time that Russia has sent a fighter jet under the banner of national security. In April, Russia dispatched a fighter jet to escort a German naval aircraft over the Baltic Sea. In March, a U.S. drone was downed in an incident following or involving a Russian jet over the Black Sea.
Russia is paying a heavy price for its war on Ukraine. In January and February alone, Moscow spent about 2 trillion rubles or $26 billion on defense. That is a whopping 282% increase from last year during the same period.
Absolutely, Rohit. That's a huge number that we are speaking about right now. Now, Russia's latest budget data shows that the military costs for Moscow are escalating by the day. But Russia's defense industry is humming along thanks to rising military production and massive state spending. That is mitigating some of the economic impact of the Western sanctions.
That includes a cap on its oil export price. Now, last year, during January and February, Russia spent 525.4 billion rubles from its budget on national defense. The data for this year showed January's defense budget was 1.18 trillion rubles, while February's was 822.4 billion rubles. The defense budget for 2023 in Russia is estimated to be nearly 5 trillion rubles. But Russia has already spent 40% of that annual defense budget in January and February alone. So it is clear Russia will have a budget deficit compared to a surplus in 2022.
Now, what is not helping Russia is that the country is spending heavily on defense, even as the energy revenues have dropped. Moscow began a special military operation in Ukraine on February 24th of last year. That was the biggest attack on a European state since World War II.
Amid speculation over his health, Belarus's state news channel published a photo of President Alexander Lukashenko at what it said was a military command center. This is Lukashenko's first public appearance in almost a week. He was last seen on the 9th of May at Victory Day events in both Moscow and the Belarusian capital, Minsk. His failure to appear in public since then had prompted reports that he had been taken to a medical facility. Here now is a report.
Belarusian state media released this video of President Alexander Lukashenko on Monday after speculation about his health intensified over the weekend. The video purports to show the 68-year-old at a military command center in what would be his first public appearance in almost a week. Dressed in a military uniform, Lukashenko is seated in a chair, speaking with officers. He appears to have a bandage on his left hand and is short of breath at times. He had not been pictured in public since he reviewed Russia's annual military parade on Moscow's Red Square on May 9th. He later skipped a lunch hosted by Russian President Vladimir Putin and opted to drive over the traditional post-parade stroll. On Sunday, Lukashenko missed a ceremony in Minsk amid unconfirmed media reports that he had been hospitalized. Lukashenko has ruled Belarus with an iron fist since 1994. If he is incapacitated and unable to rule, his job is passed in a caretaker capacity to the Speaker of the Upper House of Parliament until new elections are held. Lukashenko's office has declined to comment on his absence. Exiled Belarusian opposition leader Svetlana Tikhanovskaya told her supporters on Monday to be ready to grab any chance to turn her country into a democracy.
The United States is seeing more indications that Russia and Iran are expanding their unprecedented defense partnership. As per Washington, the cooperation is helping Moscow prolong its